And welcome to today's deep dive. We are so glad you're here with us because today our mission is to unpack a really monumental, yet I think it's fair to say, heavily misunderstood event that just unfolded in our nation's capital.
Heavily misunderstood is putting it mildly, honestly.
Right. We're talking about the complete, well, the absolute failure of the April 2026 special parliamentary session.
And, for the listener, that failure is not just some political trivia. It has massive, massive implications.
Yeah.
We are looking at what this means for women's representation in India and, frankly, how it threatens to upend the entire balance of power between the North and the South.
It's a huge deal.
It really is. And to understand the actual mechanics of what went wrong, because it's complicated, we are drawing our insights today from one incredibly detailed piece of journalism.
Which we definitely need to highlight because the pedigree of this source is, well, it's fascinating. We are pulling from the cover story of the April 2026 edition of the digital e-magazine, Pre-Sense. That's Pre-Sense, pronounced in two distinct syllables.
Right, Pre-Sense.
Yeah, it's published by the Prime Point Foundation. And for those who, don't track media history, this isn't some fly-by-night blog or something. This specific issue is their 230th edition.
Which is an incredible milestone, and it has a really remarkable origin story, too. Pre-Sense has been running for more than 20 years now. It was launched back in March 2006, and it was actually started on the direct suggestion of former President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. His mandate was very simple. He wanted to promote positive journalism. So this digital-only e-magazine was started specifically for that purpose.
That's amazing. And the author of this particular cover story is Prime Point Srinivasan. He's the managing editor and notably the founder of the Sansad Ratna Awards.
Right, the Sansad Ratna.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with those are the awards that recognize top-performing parliamentarians. So Srinivasan is someone who has spent decades, I mean literally decades, with a front-row seat to the internal, often hidden gears of Parliament.
It really has.
He knows how the machine is supposed to work, which makes his analysis of how it just, broke down so compelling.
Exactly. And before we really get into the weeds here, I do want to set the stage for you, the listener.
Yeah, good idea.
Because the events covered in this Pre-Sense article involve some highly charged, high-stakes political maneuvering by both the ruling government and the opposition. And our role in this deep dive is definitely not to take sides. We will remain strictly impartial throughout this. We are simply going to explore the facts, the constitutional realities, and the raw data exactly as it's presented in the article.
Right. Our goal is just to help you understand the machinery of this failure, right? Not to point political fingers.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The core irony of this whole situation is just staggering to me. India has been promising women a fair, reserved share of seats in parliament and state assemblies for 30 years.
30 years, yeah.
Think about that. The very first bill trying to achieve this was introduced all the way back in 1996. Fast forward to September 2023, and Parliament finally passes the 106th constitutional amendment, the Nari Shakti Vandana Adhiniyam, with unanimous support.
And it was a massive celebration at the time.
Huge. But as the Pre-Sense article points out, there was a trap buried in the fine print.
Yeah, there was. A trap built entirely around timelines and census data. You see, the 2023 reservation was legally tied to a fresh delimitation of constituencies.
Okay, let's pause right there because we hear that word thrown around on the news constantly.
Delimitation.
Yeah, delimitation. Make sure we are totally clear here. What exactly is delimitation in, plain English?
Sure. Simply put, delimitation is the act of redrawing the map of electoral districts.
Okay.
As populations grow and shift around the country, you redraw the boundaries so that every member of parliament represents roughly the same number of citizens.
Right.
It ensures that the principle of one person, one vote holds true. The trap in the 2023 Women's Reservation Bill was that it stated this redrawing, this delimitation, could only happen after the first census following 2023.
And since the 2021 census was delayed, we now know that the next census is scheduled for 2027.
Correct. And then you have to add at least 2 more years for the Delimitation Commission to actually survey the country and finish redrawing the map.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that means the women of India, after finally getting a bill passed in 2023, we're looking at waiting until at least 2034 to actually sit in those reserved seats.
And there's your 10-year post-dated check.
Exactly.
It's a promise of equality, just, not today. So, facing enormous backlash over this massive delay, the government decides to act. They called a special session of Parliament for April 16th, 2026.
Right.
And the objective was basically to bypass that agonizing 2027 census. Wait, they wanted to use the older 2011 census data, expand the Lok Sabha to a massive 850 seats, and fast-track the Women's Reservation so it would be active for the upcoming 2029 elections.
Which, on paper, expediting women's representation sounds like a highly commendable idea.
Definitely.
But the execution is where the wheels just completely fell off. I mean, the timeline detailed in the article is almost hard to believe.
It really is.
3 highly complex bills were introduced on April 16th. And these bills, including the 131st Constitutional Amendment, fundamentally altered 7 different constitutional articles.
7 articles.
7! We are talking about dozens of pages of incredibly dense structural legal text that changes the very fabric of the Republic.
And when did they actually vote on it?
April 17th.
Less than 48 hours later.
Less than 48 hours. It was a chaotic rush. There were no public drafts published in advance for citizens or experts to review.
Nothing.
Nothing. There were no all-party meetings to build consensus. They didn't even consult the state chief ministers, whose states were about to be radically affected by this.
That's why...
Furthermore, this was dropped onto the floor of Parliament right in the middle of heated assembly election campaigns across several states. So many MPs were distracted, or not even in Delhi.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around that pace. I mean, it's like being asked to sign a 30-year mortgage on a house, but the bank won't let you read the terms and conditions, and the real estate agent is tapping their watch telling you the offer expires in 5 minutes.
That is exactly what it felt like. In fact, M.R. Madhavan from PRS Legislative Research warned in The Hindu on the very day of introduction that bills with such a massive impact needed intensive deliberation.
Yeah, obviously.
He said they at least needed to be sent to a parliamentary committee.
But those warnings were completely ignored. And I think this brings us to the core conflict here, right? The North-South divide.
Yes, the huge elephant in the room.
Because when you do a delimitation based purely on population, states with higher populations naturally get more seats in Parliament. And southern states have been raising alarm bells about this for years.
For decades, really.
Right, because if we look at the history, southern states have been highly successful at implementing national socioeconomic policies over the last few decades.
Right.
Better health care, better education, and highly effective family planning. As a result, their population growth stabilized.
Which is what they were asked to do.
Exactly. Meanwhile, several northern states saw their populations boom.
So if we redraw the map based on raw population today, the South is essentially penalized with a loss of political power, precisely because they succeeded in their development goals.
Exactly.
So how could any southern state agree to this rushed bill without some sort of ironclad guarantee protecting their proportional voice? Well, see, that is the million-dollar question. And the way the government tried to address that concern on the floor of the Lok Sabha is just fascinating.
What happened?
The Home Minister gave this sweeping speech declaring with absolute confidence that no state would lose out.
Okay.
He promised that every single state would get a flat 50% increase in their seats. He was incredibly specific.
Really?
Yeah, he said Tamil Nadu would jump from 39 to 59 seats, Kerala from 20 to 30.
Okay, but I'm looking at the Presence article, and it points out a glaring red flag here. Where was that 50% promise actually written down? I'm assuming, based on the tone of the article, it wasn't in the legal text.
It wasn't in any of the 3 bills.
Nowhere.
Not a single line, clause, or proviso guaranteed a flat 50% increase. It was purely a verbal assurance.
Oh, wow.
And legally, that means absolutely nothing. The Supreme Court of India has ruled on this extensively, including in landmark cases like the demonetization challenge.
Right.
There is a fundamental legal doctrine that says there can be no estoppel against statute.
Okay, wait. I need a translation on that. What does estoppel against statute actually mean for the average voter listening to this?
Sure. It basically means that no matter what a minister promises in a speech, even if they shout it from the floor of Parliament on live national television, it does not override what the written law says.
Right. The law is the law.
Exactly. The Independent Delimitation Commission is legally bound by the written gazette, by the Constitution. They cannot and will not base their maps on a politician's speech.
Oh.
And the bills that were rushed through left Article 81 of the Constitution completely untouched.
And what does that specific Article 81(2)(a) say?
It legally mandates that seats must be distributed between states in proportion to their population. Period.
So the math the Home Minister presented just doesn't align with the Constitution at all.
Not even a little bit.
The article cites former Minister P. Chidambaram, who actually ran the real numbers.
Yeah.
He pointed out that if you apply the 2011 census data, as the bill explicitly intended, Tamil Nadu wouldn't get 59 seats.
Oh.
The math dictates they'd get around 46. Kerala wouldn't get 30, they'd get around 26. The South's overall share of voice in Parliament would drop from 24.3% down to 20.7%.
Which is a huge drop.
Yeah. I mean, if you're sitting in Chennai or Kochi right now, that is a massive dilution of your state's influence in national matters.
Which led to a moment of deep, almost tragic irony during the debate. RSP MP N.K. Premachandran stood up and directly challenged BJP MP Tejasvi Surya.
Oh, I read about this.
Yeah, he asked him to point out exactly where in the written bill the 50% increase was guaranteed.
Let me guess he couldn't find it.
He fumbled, and in his attempt to answer, he ended up pointing to Article 81.
You have got to be kidding me. He pointed to the exact constitutional article that makes a flat 50% increase mathematically and legally impossible.
Yes. That is the reality of rushing complex legislation in 48 hours. You cannot guarantee a flat rate increase while the Constitution explicitly demands population proportionality. The two concepts totally contradict each other.
Okay, so let's look at the aftermath of this mess. The government's bills were rushed, they were legally flawed, and they completely lacked the constitutional guarantees the southern states needed to protect their political voice.
Right.
Consequently, the opposition rallies, they vote the bills down, the bills fail, the South is protected from this bad math. So, problem solved, right? The system worked.
Not even close.
See, this is where the story gets really compelling for me, because the pre-sense article reveals that by defeating these bills, the opposition actually left the South in a vastly more dangerous position.
It really is a classic case of winning the battle but losing the war. Both sides chose to totally ignore the constitutional ghost in the room.
The ghost in the room.
Yeah, because to grasp why the South is in peril right now, you have to rewind to the year 2001. The Vajpayee government at the time recognized this exact population imbalance problem. So they passed the 84th Amendment to freeze the population proportionality rule. They effectively paused the game specifically to protect those southern states from losing power for having successful family planning.
But the crucial detail there is that the pause button doesn't stay pushed forever.
Precisely. The text of the 2001 freeze explicitly states it will expire automatically when the figures of the first census after the year 2026 are published.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The defeated April 2026 bill would have bypassed that expiration by forcing a new system based on older 2011 data. But by voting the bill down and failing to provide any alternative whatsoever, the opposition just let the clock keep ticking.
So the bomb is still armed.
Exactly. The moment the 2026 census data is published, which is imminent, that old Vajpayee freeze shatters. Fresh delimitation must occur under the original, unamended, raw population rules.
And the math on that raw population rule is just devastating. The article quotes Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, the founder of Lok Sabha, who laid out the exact consequences.
And they are grim.
Very. Under the upcoming 2026 census delimitation, 7 southern and eastern states are projected to lose a combined 35 seats.
35 seats.
Tamil Nadu loses 10. Kerala loses 7. Andhra Pradesh loses 5. And at the exact same time, 4 northern states will gain 34 seats. UP alone gains 12, Bihar gains 10.
Which is exactly why Dr. Narayan called the opposition's victory a spectacular self-goal.
Now, self-goal, yeah.
They flexed their political muscle to vote down a flawed bill claiming to protect the South, but by doing so without pushing through a backup plan, they basically guaranteed a much worse outcome for the South in just a few years.
It perfectly illustrates the gap between political theater and actual governance, doesn't it?
It really does.
The pre-sense article mentions DMK leader M.K. Stalin publicly burning a copy of the delimitation bill. Now, politically, sure, that makes for a fantastic photograph. It rallies the base. But constitutionally, it solved absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
The Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy summed up the tragedy of the whole session brilliantly when he said, "Justice is rendered neither to the South nor to the women."
Yet both sides went straight to the television studios claiming massive victories.
Of course they did.
The government blamed the opposition for being anti-women and blocking reservation. The opposition celebrated themselves as the saviors of the South. But neither side actually did the hard work of addressing that ticking constitutional time bomb with any real seriousness.
It's frustrating. Let's transition away from the regional math for a second, because the article raises a totally different, incredibly fundamental question about the physical machinery of our democracy itself.
Right.
The core of the government's plan was to expand the Lok Sabha from 543 members to 850 members. Even if you somehow perfectly balance the north-south math, do we actually need an 850-member Lok Sabha? Does a mega parliament function better?
Well, honestly, it's a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
If this had passed, India's Lok Sabha would become the largest directly elected legislative body in the entire world. But, we often confuse size with effectiveness.
Right. I mean, think about your own workplace.
Yeah.
If you're in a chaotic corporate meeting with 10 people and nothing is getting done because everyone is talking over each other and nobody has enough time to present their ideas, inviting 20 more people to that exact same one-hour meeting
Right.
isn't going to fix your agenda.
Definitely not.
It's just going to make the room louder
Yeah.
and the meeting more useless.
And the data supports your analogy perfectly. The article brings in Chakshu Roy from PRS Legislative Research to highlight the sheer lack of working hours.
What are the numbers there?
Currently, the Lok Sabha only meets for about 50 to 70 days a year.
That's it.
That's it. And during the 2025 monsoon session, MPs submitted roughly 30,000 questions for the government to answer.
30,000.
Do you know how many oral questions are actually answered per day? About 20.
20 out of 30,000.
It's a massive bottleneck. Compare that to the UK's House of Commons. They have a large body, 650 members, but they meet for 150 days a year, not 50.
Right. Triple the amount of time.
Exactly. And they rely on a highly rigorous, empowered committee system to do the heavy lifting of scrutinizing bills.
And this is where prime point Trina Velson's personal perspective in the Pre-Sense article is so invaluable.
Yes.
Through his work with the Sansad Ratna Awards, he has watched thousands of hours of these debates over the last 2 decades. And he notes a sharp, depressing deterioration in the quality of parliamentary debate.
It's really sad.
He says it's no longer about individual MPs studying national issues and bringing nuanced arguments to the floor. It has become a purely binary environment. You are either loudly pro-Modi or loudly anti-Modi.
Srinivasan describes the modern House as resembling a political arena of sloganeering. Members routinely rush the well, they carry placards, and disrupt proceedings.
Yeah.
It looks less like a temple of democracy and more like a protest rally. Now, picture injecting 300 more politicians into that exact same volatile environment while keeping the exact same limited 50 to 70 working days a year.
The math gets grim fast. I mean, think about your own local MP. If you expand to 850 people fighting for microphone time over just 60 days, an individual representative might go their entire 5-year term without ever getting a meaningful chance to stand up and speak for your specific local issues.
Exactly.
It completely dilutes the voice of the citizen.
And if we look at the structural design of Parliament, expanding only the Lok Sabha creates a massive hidden danger regarding the upper house, the Rajya Sabha.
Because the bills expanded the Lok Sabha to 850, but they left the Rajya Sabha frozen at its current strength of 245. Why is that disparity so dangerous?
Well, the Rajya Sabha exists as a constitutional check against majoritarian excess. It represents the interests of the states.
Okay.
If the two houses fundamentally disagree on a bill, the Constitution allows for a joint sitting to vote on it together. Currently, the Lok Sabha outnumbers the Rajya Sabha by about 2.2 to 1 in a joint sitting.
Right.
It's an advantage, obviously, but it can be overcome. But if you bloat the Lok Sabha to 850, that ratio skyrockets to 3.3 to 1.
So the Lok Sabha could basically just bulldoze right over the upper house whenever it wants.
Precisely. A government could hold a relatively slim majority in the Lok Sabha, have terrible approval in the Rajya Sabha, and still easily force through any controversial legislation they want via a joint sitting.
Wow.
The upper house would essentially become a ceremonial rubber stamp. And just to underline how broken the logistics already are, the article notes a really baffling detail. The post of Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha hasn't even been filled in the last 2 Lok Sabhas.
Wait, really? Yeah.
Yeah. If the current system can't even manage to elect a basic constitutional officer to help run a 543-member House, the idea that they could smoothly manage 850 members is highly improbable.
So, stepping back, what does this all mean? How did we arrive at a point where an emergency special session results in absolutely zero progress for women and heightened constitutional risk for everyone else?
That's a great question.
Because the Pre-Sense article makes it clear that the government wasn't out of time. The constitutional clock for the Women's Reservation Amendment runs for 15 years. That gives them until 2041 to figure out the census and delimitation. There was zero need for a 48-hour panic session. How should a mature democracy have handled an issue of this magnitude?
Well, the author points directly to the gold standard of constitutional amendments. We just have to look back to the 2001 model handled by the Vajpayee government.
Okay.
That was the 84th Amendment that created the freeze we discussed earlier.
What made their approach so different from the April 2026 failure?
Consensus. They didn't ambush the parliament. Drafts of the proposed changes were published months in advance to invite public comment and expert scrutiny.
Imagine that.
Right. State chief ministers were brought to the table and consulted. But most importantly, they formed a joint parliamentary committee, a JPC.
Oh, okay.
This committee was headed by a respected senior member with proportional representation from all political parties. They were given 6 full months to study the implications, interview constitutional experts, and tackle the tough problems head-on.
So a JPC could have sat down, looked at Article 81(2)(a), realized the North-South math was a disaster, and actually drafted a bulletproof legal solution.
Exactly.
Like, say, drafting a brand new Article 81(2)(a) with a special schedule that sets a minimum floor of seats for every single state.
Yes.
That would give the South a legal, constitutional guarantee, rather than just relying on a politician's verbal promise during a speech.
That is exactly how it should work. Once you build that consensus and have a legally sound document, then you bring it to Parliament for a vote. A constitutional amendment isn't some routine money bill you can ram through on a Friday afternoon.
No, of course not.
It alters the fundamental operating code of the entire country.
But instead of following that 2001 model of consensus, we got what the article summarizes as a profound tragedy. Politics won, and India lost.
That's the reality.
To summarize the facts impartially for you, the government rushed a deeply flawed, highly complex bill, largely for election season optics, without doing the hard work of providing legal guarantees to the states. And the opposition, seeing the flaw, shot the bill down to claim a regional electoral victory, but walked away without providing an alternative, leaving the southern states entirely unprotected from the impending 2026 census cliff.
And amidst all that loud political maneuvering, the original intent of the session was totally abandoned.
Completely.
The women of India, who were promised an equal voice 3 decades ago and who celebrated so joyously when the 2023 amendment passed, are once again left holding a promise with no actual delivery date.
You're still holding that post-dated check.
They are. And this raises one final provocative question for you, the listener, to mull over as we wrap up today.
What's that?
We've spent a lot of time talking about the raw numbers, debating whether 543 MPs or 850 MPs is the right number. But the Presence article reminds us of a very unique, often overlooked feature of Indian democracy: the strict anti-defection law.
Right. Before we close, explain how the anti-defection law or the whip system actually works in practice.
So in India, if a political party issues a whip, which is a binding directive on a specific vote, an MP is legally forced to vote exactly as their party leadership commands.
Wow.
Yeah. If they decide to vote their conscience or vote for what their specific local constituents want, and it goes against the party whip, they can be instantly disqualified and lose their seat in Parliament.
So individual judgment is essentially outlawed on major bills. They are legally forced to be rubber stamps for the few leaders at the top.
Yes. So as you look at this massive, messy battle over expanding the Parliament, ask yourself this. If individual MPs aren't legally allowed to vote their own conscience anyway, does expanding the number of seats from 543 to 850 actually increase the democratic voice of the average citizen?
That's a great point.
Or does adding 300 more MPs simply multiply the echoes of the party leaders pulling the strings?
That is a phenomenal question to leave off on. If the representatives in the room aren't truly allowed to speak for us, does cramming more of them into the room actually change the conversation? We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Navigating the dense mechanics of our democracy isn't always easy, but understanding these gears and how they occasionally grind to a halt is how we hold the system accountable. Keep questioning the fine print, keep seeking the signal through the noise, and we will catch you on the next one.